When the prophet Job lost his family, his response was, Adonai natan, v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be God. And these have to be our words as we face the loss of Iris Fishman. Our mother, our friend, our involver in the community. And we say, Adonai natan, that the Lord lent us, gave us Iris. She enriched the world by all of her songs and her words and her music and her personality. And now, Adonai lakach, and now God has taken her from our midst. But because we were so privileged to have her as part of our world, we say as Job did, thank you, God, with the words, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Blessed be God's name for having lent her to us. This is a time in which we need comfort, so we do what Jews have done throughout the centuries. We turn to the book of Psalms, and there we find the words, Esa Enai El Haharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai Osei Shemayim Va'aretz. I lift up mine eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. Adonai yishmar tzecha uvoecha me'ata v'ad olam. God will guard your going and your coming, now and forever. The words of the 23rd Psalm, Adonai roi v'lo echsar. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Adonai ma'adam v'teda ehu, ben enosh v'tachash vehu. O God, what are we that you have regard for us, and what are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You caused us to revert to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright, they shall have peace. God, you redeem the soul of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. And of course, in moments like this, we read from the book of Proverbs, in which it says, Esa, Eshet chayo mi yimsa v'rachok mipni nim mechra, batach ba lev ba'ala, v'shalal lo yaksar. A woman of valor, who can find? She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. She writes with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. And her husband sings and sang all his life her praises, saying, "Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excellest them all." In the book of Ecclesiastes, it is written, "L'chol zaman v'la'et l'chol chefetz taket hashamayim, et la'leda v'et lamut, et la'tad v'et la'kornetiyah." For everything there is a season and a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And interesting enough, this is exactly what this moment is. It's a time for mourners who feel that they find it difficult to speak at moments like this. Yet one of the things we know about mourning is you really talk your way through grief. And the more that you can talk, really, the better off you are. So I say to all of you who come to pay a condolence call, one of the greatest helps you can be, of course, is to get the family to talk and for them to speak about their mother. And one of the greatest things you can do is you can tell an Irish story. And what will happen in an Irish story is they will say, "Oh, yeah, I knew that," or they'll say, "Oh, I forgot that," or, "I never knew that." So the question is, how did Iris touch each and every one of you? And that's what this moment is about, kind of that review of the life of Iris Fishman. So to begin that review, I'm going to call upon Jane Friedman, who was one of Iris's wonderful friends, and then I will share a little bit, and since we're a little smaller crowd, maybe some of you would like to share when I get done. So Janie? In front of the mic.
Hi, I'm so privileged to be able to speak about my dear friend, Iris. She was so special and a tremendous influence on me and on so many others that she knew. She was one of the finest lyricists I ever came across. I loved her lyrics, used to compare them to Rodgers and Hammerstein and all the greatest. Her sense of humor, her love for what she was doing, her compassion for the whole thing, and the joy that she got from it always pleased me. She wrote with such tremendous ease and so quickly. When I tried to imitate her, it would take me like 2 months to maybe do one verse that could even start to compare with what she wrote in maybe, 5 or 10 minutes that would come into her head. Iris, to me, was brilliant. She also was very humble. She never put herself first. She was always putting her friends first, or the people first that she was writing for. She was a part of the Jewish scene, a big part of it for 20 years with the late Susie Sickerman and Lois Katowski. And the three of them together worked for so many years. And we went to so many different places and performed, even went as far as Brandeis in Boston and did a show, all written by the Jewish scene girls. And much of it with their sense of humor and their wonderful knowledge of what was happening in the Jewish community. On top of doing all of that, she also managed to raise 2 delightful children, Judy and Rick, and enjoy them and their wonderful dad. Iris had the most fantastic relationship with her husband. I never knew of the two of them. They must have had some arguments, but I don't think terribly many. They were so crazy about each other and took such good care of each other always. So she was someone that I totally admired and adored, and who made me laugh and who could make me feel almost like crying with her lyrics. Nobody did a better job. And I just want to thank her for all of the wonderful things that she brought into Cleveland and into the surroundings of Cleveland and further. I want to thank Iris for her laughter and her love that she brought to all of us. And I just am so grateful that she and I became closer and closer as the years went on. Iris's last several years were not easy ones, but every time I went to see her, she had a smile on her face for me. She never complained, and she was always thrilled that I came. That gives me the courage to go on and to try to age with courage like she had. And I will always envy her talent and her remarkable brain. God bless you, Iris, and thank you for listening.
Often allow people to speak before me and think the better part of it would be to get up and say amen and sit down. But I have to add to it. Rick and Stephen, Judy, Oliver Shalom, her brothers Abraham and Sanford, nieces Marlene and Sharon, and the other nieces and nephews, and the extended family. I mentioned Rose and Sonny Reuben, Zichronah Livracha. And then there is Janie and Lois and Epi and Carol and Elaine and Nancy and Susie, Oliver Shalom, and Shirley and Violet and Al Gray and Kelly Davis, and of course Buddy Bear. I'm not sure yesterday what it was that you guys said as we were talking that made me think of the following story. And I think, Janie, maybe you just hit upon it in the sense of her humility. There's a midrash that a man was looking at all of God's creations, asking each one for some response. And he said to the fruit-bearing trees, "Can you make a little sound?" And the trees replied, "Our fruits are sufficient advertisement for us." For your mom and our friend and relative Iris Fishman, fruits are really sufficient advertisement for the meaning of her long life and what she did in this world for all of us. She was born here in Cleveland on July 29th of 1926. To Charles and Rose Katz, who owned a dry goods store. Her siblings were Abraham and Sanford, who unfortunately died very young from a tragic accident. She always looked after her family. In fact, I heard the story that she came home from college to take care of her mother, and after her demise, she had her dad live with her and Julius. She always looked after Abraham and did what she could to make his life better. From her brother, she got two wonderful nieces, Marlene and Sharon, who she adored and were like daughters to her. But going back to Iris, she went to John Adams High School and then went on to the University of Wisconsin until she had to come home to take care of Mom. Iris eventually graduated from Flora Stone Mather, and it was on a blind date when this guy comes to the door, and it's a cute story. She thought you're laughing already. She thought that he was the furrier friend of her father because he looked like his father, who was a friend of hers, only to discover that she was wrong, and it was her date. And little, of course, did she know that she'd end up marrying her future husband, Julius, and they were married for 53 years. They were friends, admirers of each other, a symbiotic relationship. Julius used to say that Iris was the architect of his life and the kids' lives too. As we heard, kids can't remember them fighting either, so you've got a good memory, Janie. They supported each other like, Iris did all of Julie's dictation and his medical notes and so forth. And Rick, you told me that her hands literally flew across the typewriter and so forth. We couldn't remember where she got all those secretarial skills, but she was good with dictation and shorthand and transcription and organization. Organization, all we have to do is ask Rabbi Brickner or Rabbi Lillyveld. It was an honor for her to serve them, but it was an honor for them to have her because she was so very good. And of course, Rebecca Brickner became a godmother to all of you and so forth. And Tila asked to be remembered as well. Why was Iris good? Because that word keeps coming up over and over again, that word brilliant. She was brilliant. Brilliant in so many different ways. She had a way, as we have learned with words. She was that wordsmith. She, as we heard, was phenomenal in writing lyrics with Lois and Susie Sickerman. And as we heard, none of the great lyricists had anything on these women when it came to rhyme schemes. Their fruit and songs were sufficient advertisements for them. Yes, it was the show with the, as they called themselves, the Magnificent Seven. I've named them all in the beginning here, but all of them, together, they entertained so many Federation audiences and the audiences at Fairmont Temple and around the community, including, and I remember this, Elaine, you snuck them in on a Friday night when they were honoring me for, I don't remember if it was a birthday or my anniversary at the temple, but whatever it was, there they were up on stage singing to me. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of Iris's writing skills. She wrote this long poem to Janie. Janie was embarrassed to read it herself, but I get to read it for her. And so it says, to Janie with love, happy birthday. Just a little bit. The warmth and the charm and the wonderful flair, the legs and the cheekbones, the height and the hair, the grace and the glamour, the elegant style, the generous spirit, the beautiful smile, the caring, the sharing, the dealing with pain, are some of the facets of our dear friend, Jane. She goes on and on, but you just get a little bit of that smile, in the words that she chose and so forth. Iris had that smooth sounding voice, so that she was often the master of ceremonies for the singing group, or as she would say, she was just a member of the choir. She didn't sing. And she took that voice and talent, and she and Lois and Susie produced, as we heard, 20 years of the Jewish scene, an award-winning radio program here in Cleveland. Uh, there were so many listeners who would tune in regularly on Sunday just to hear it and so forth. And they had a good time doing it. It's interesting, we mentioned before that Susie Sickerman, her longtime friend, died 11 years ago to this day, to the very day that she passed away. And Steve, Susie's son, wrote for the two of them, friends and collaborators to the end, and how true that was. Iris also took her talents and produced, you didn't mention the road show, which was called Yesterday to Today and Tomorrow. There were something like 65 young people who were in the show, including our Brian. And they took this show around to synagogues and organizations to have the kids work to unite the community. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Iris had a lot of good friends in the community. For one of the things we know that Iris was a good friend to them as well. Friends like Violet Spivak and Al Gray, longtime friends who, interesting enough, turned out to be her dinner mates at Stone Gardens. Friends like Janie, who, we can't give you enough credit for all your visits, but as you said, you got something out of it. You got a smile, and right up until the end. With all this extracurricular activities, Iris took her witty sense of humor and set out to be a wonderful wife to Julius, and a doting and caring and accepting and supportive human being to her two children, to Rick and Judith. As you said, she was behind you in everything you did and your greatest supporter. You both had great admiration for your mom and really enjoyed her. And as you said, that song, The Wind Beneath Her Wings, were really where you were, that you looked up to. And she was a great inspiration for you, the best that you could have. And Steve, when you came into this family as Rick's friend and mate, you too had a special relationship with Iris. It's been 30-some years, 38 years, something. Yeah. And she loved you unconditionally. And all of us admired Iris's talent, her ability to go to house sales and see old things and odd things that you wouldn't think, and then she would get them like there was on the ceiling, wasn't it? The cornisters on the ceiling. She bought them and turned them into support brackets for the glass table in your house that we'll be able to see. A library that she saw in was a convent or something like that, and that would be great, and bought it, the whole room, and brought it home and used it in her house, in Julie's office and all. And she was the best repurposer that you can imagine. Loved antiques, was very creative in her cooking, a great baker. Her cheesecake and brownies are world-renowned because she shared it with people around the world who wanted her recipes. And she kept a spotless home and go around, even as we talked about picking up dog hairs, that beautiful house that they had on Bolingbrook. And, of course, we have to mention that Iris spoke fluent Yiddish. She had to, because that's what her mom and dad knew, so her parents spoke to her. And she and Julius traveled everywhere, to Israel and Japan and Mexico City, all over the world. Traveled with their good friends, Rose and Sonny Rubin, Zichronah Livracha. And they all had a great time together. I love the story you told me yesterday, Judy. This is a story. I said, what was your favorite trip, or what do you remember? And she says, the trip out west, and when they went to the Grand Canyon and so forth. It's one of those that I believe everybody ought to do one way, either with your kids or with your parents. Anyway, she's told me the story that she convinced her mom that we should go horseback riding. Iris got on a horse, a gray horse named Sage. Judy tried to teach her how to stand up in the stirrups and so forth. So, after a while, her tussock hurt and got pretty bruised. And you know how she came back from where they were? She rode in the chuck wagon on the way back. But she did it for you. She did it for you. And there were special things that, we talked about memories that you had, Rick, that Mom did for you. One of the things you admired about your mom is that you always knew what she believed and where she stood on them. And she was consistent, and she stood fast. And we know that Iris was connected to her extended family, and it was Julie's family. I mean, it was huge and so forth. And so there's that warm feeling of all the get-togethers that they had, and of course connected to the Jewish community in Fairmont Temple and so forth. Her fruits really are the advertisement for a life well lived. Now, I would be remiss if I did not compliment you, Judy, on your devotion to your mom in these last period of time, these last years. Being there, making her smile, lying next to Mom in her dying moments. And I need to mention Kelly Davis, her aide, who kept Iris looking beautiful with her hair well done and so forth. And I guess I would be even more remiss because you would be upset with me if I didn't mention Buddy Bear there, Lane. What? She would be upset. Oh, Iris would be upset. Oh, yes, I can't risk that one at all. Buddy Bear, who was named by Iris, who would lie next to her, giving her smoochies and even shedding a tear when Iris died. And the rest of you need to, if you want to ask this story, ask that story, because it's a beautiful story about the two of them, Iris and the dog, just being together and celebrating life together. So what do we do today? We're celebrating. We're celebrating, and we probably should go home and eat some fruit as part of the Shiva, because this is this great gifted woman, Iris Fishman, who made a big difference in this world. Does anybody have anything else that I've missed that you'd like to add? Or see? Come.
Good morning. I actually had something planned to say today, and I had to read it. It was a reading, and I chose not to for fear of getting upset. But I need to thank Iris and the family and the friends for loving me. And I joke with Rick a lot that I had Julie around my pinky the second I met him, which I was extremely fortunate for, to say the least. Iris took a little bit of effort. Okay, a little bit more effort. But she ultimately gave me the treatment of being her own son. And I felt of her as my own mother. And with Judy and Rick, especially, my new family, 37 years ago. So, Iris knew unconditional love, and she used it with Judy. She used it with Ricky. She used it with me. But she always enveloped our passions for things in our lives and wanted what was best for us, even if she might not agree with it. But ultimately, she seemed to always agree with everything, which was the wonderful thing about Iris. So I wish I had my reading. It's a reading that I read when my mother passed away, when my father passed away, and when my brother passed away. But I guess it's better to do something from the heart, and bless you. I love you, Iris.
Anybody else have something they want to share? So we say to Iris, L'chiba shalom, go in peace for a job well done in this world. And we thank you. Now, I know that some of you do have words of how she touched you, so I would encourage you during these next moments of silence to speak them to her. For there is one of the Jewish beliefs that she can still hear. So let us speak those words to her in our own hearts. For Iris Fishman's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever, for her companionship that we share along life's path and which continues to the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give our thanks to God, and may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. And let us all say, Amen. We rise for the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim. Shochem Bam Ramim. Amsei Menucha Nechuna Takat Kamfei HaShekhinah. Im Kedoshim Utaharim Kazohar Harakia Mazirim. Et Nishmat Yedidenu Bat Aviha Ve'ima. Shahalachal Olama. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence. To Iris Shirley Fishman, the daughter of Charles and Esther Katz, who has entered eternity. Bal harachamim yastireha b'sedek hanafav lolamim v'yitzrur b'tzrur ha'chaim et nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar. Amen. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. This concludes our service here. We will continue at the graveside and then return to Judy's home, which is at 5693 Shelton Road. For those who don't know where it is, it's north of north of Mayfield on Brainerd. It's the third right, the third to the right in the very end in the cul-de-sac. The family will be receiving today following service until 4, and then this evening between 7 and 9, and then tomorrow in the morning between 10 and noon, in the afternoon between 1 and 4. Those who wish can contribute to the Dr. Julius and Iris Fishman Compassionate Caregiving Fund at Menorah Park, or charity of your choice.